It's time for a new concept, pinch, hitting for Chi Rodriguez. Bob Johnson, wearing number 3. Please rise for the singing of the national anthem. Love going to the ballpark because I'm always not between the speakers, but I'm in a place where I get triple echoes. Oh man. Okay, got my screwdriver here because I'm Doctor Who. Where's my TARDIS? So, time for a new idea called torque. Not as in, man, you torque me off, but torque in the sense, I'm not mad at you. Poor tiger's sitting over there like, Daddy's mad. Daddy's not mad. Yes, you're a good doggy. Just sit there and watch me. Maybe we'll do a couple problems for the kids, okay? So, torque is rotary force. Torque is what we feel resistance when we try to loosen a screw that's kind of rusted in place. Or we put one into wood, the resistance, we're putting torque into it. So Newton's second law in the linear form says the net force is mass times acceleration. Well, in rotational terms, we have, just like we had the big four, we have a rotational Newton's second law. It's called torque. Torque, which is a tau, a T in Greek, is I, which stands for the moment of inertia times alpha. What the heck is the moment of inertia? Well, moment of inertia is how mass is distributed around, and I'm looking for something here, around an axis of rotation. So here I have a box, and I'm going to spin it this way. So I have a little bit of mass around my axis of rotation. If I use this as the axis of rotation, it's much harder to move it back and forth because there's more mass further away from the axis of rotation. When I'm rotating about this point, the mass is, within an inch or so of my axis of rotation, which is coming out at you. 3 dimensions, see the effect? So at any rate, this way there is mass further away from my axis, which is now vertical up and down from floor to ceiling. So thank you very much, Mr. Box for Tripod. We're done with you right now. And torque is this rotary mass times not acceleration in the linear sense, but alpha. And remember, linear guy is rotary guy times R. So A is alpha R. So alpha is the same thing as the linear acceleration divided by the radius of the turn. So torque is defined with a cross product. If you studied vectors, we needn't be too concerned about it. It's a cross product, and we use a right-hand rule. And see that effect? Don't fly away. If I take my right hand and I put it on the force and I rotate it into the radius, force rotated into radius, my thumb points to the direction of the torque. So the torque is perpendicular to the page. The torque is out of the page. Makes sense, because if I put, if I were to put a force in this direction, if I had a wrench and I were pulling a nut in this direction, loosening it, it would come out of the page. So it follows the right-hand rule when we use right-hand nuts and bolts in the U.S. If you live in a place where they use left-handed threaded nuts and bolts, well, I don't know. You'll have to use your right hand and reverse it. So this symbol here, the center of gravity symbol with the X and the circle around it, means into the page. It's supposed to represent the tail arrows of a feather. And the tip of the arrow means out of the page. So in this particular case, the torque is out of the page. It's the force times the radius. I had the TV on for the dog, and he likes Star Trek. I don't know. Go figure. There's no accounting for taste, right? So we'll mute that and get back to our lecture here, because I don't want to start again, and you don't want me to start again. So the torque is the force times the moment arm. So the further away I get, the more torque I can exert. Now, you know this is true if you've ever played close the door on your brother or sister, right? If the door is here and the hinges are over here and you close the door on your brother, you want to hold the door here to keep him from pushing it open. If you hold the door here, the moment arm is very short. This moment arm is short. You'll have to press, with 10 times the force. A child would be able to get in the room, open the door. Out here, if you put your body weight against it, you are providing the biggest torque around these hinges, imaginary hinges, if this were a door. Okay, so force times distance is torque, and the longer the moment arm, the bigger the torque. And that's a new concept for us, as we're starting to work in a rotating frame. And there's a purpose for this. We're going to get to a subject called equilibrium, where things are balanced. Why do bridges not fly away or collapse? Because of equilibrium. But in order to study that, and in order to do the problems, we need to understand linear motion and rotary motion. So we're now studying this. Now, I, as we know, denotes how the mass of the rotating object is distributed around the axis of rotation. You can't handle the truth. You can't find these particular, thank you, Jack Nicholson. I just want the truth. You can't handle the truth. Okay, I should have let it go with one. Calculus is used to derive the moments of the mass of the rotating object to the moment of inertia. So for a string with a mass on the end and I'm whirling it around, it's mr squared. For a disc like a coin that's rolling around its center, it's 1/2 mr squared. For a ring, an annulus as it's called, where the same mass of this disc is all concentrated on the edge, then that's a ring. I doesn't equal 1/2 mr squared, it equals all of it, mr squared. And for a bar, I'll have another one, please. Oh, wrong kind of bar. For a bar that is being rotated around its center like this, the moment of inertia is 1/12 ml squared, the length squared. So I should have written this with an L instead of an R, but when I wrote this, it was late at night, and old men don't do well late at night. We like to be asleep. So I is, for a bar like this, is ml squared. Is it harder to do this or harder to do this? More mass is concentrated away from my axis of rotation than it is here. Which is harder? Which requires more torque? In which way is there more mass distributed away from the axis of rotation? You probably already know. And for a thin spherical shell, it's 2/3 mr squared, and for a solid sphere of the same mass, all the same m's, it's 2/5 mr squared, where r, as usual, is the radius of the round object that can roll. So, and here's a very important idea. If I could spell the word parallel, I would be dangerous, but dyslexia reared its ugly head. And did you know I can watch a tennis match without ever moving my head? Is that weird or what? My eyes do everything but see. Okay, so the parallel axis theorem says that if I want to move the axis of rotation from here to here, it's parallel, and I moved it some distance, that the new moment of inertia is the old moment of inertia plus the mass of this object times the length that I changed the radius of rotation. The parallel axis theorem is one of the most important ideas there is. Just like we don't have to derive these, you're not responsible for deriving this, but knowing it can really save your cookies on the SSAT. So the length is the distance between the parallel axes. If I wanted to rotate the sphere not around its center, but I wanted to rotate it over here in a circle like so, then that would be be moving the axis a distance L, and I would redo my my equation and get a larger moment of inertia by the amount that I had moved it. So here is an example. The original moment of inertia of my box rotated around its center is 1/12 ml squared. That, again, we get that with calculus. You can memorize in most problems. They'll tell you what the moment of inertia is. They'll say the moment of inertia I is 1/12 ml squared. Now I'm going to move the axis of rotation out to the end and ask how the moment of inertia changes. Well, I moved it L over 2. So m L over 2 squared, which is L squared over 4, plus the original moment of inertia gives me my new moment of inertia, which is 1/3 ml squared, not 1/12 ml squared. It's going up by a factor of 4. It's a lot harder to move it around this axis, not a lot, it's easy because it's an empty box, right, than it is to rotate it around this axis. So that is having a greyhound is like having a pony roaming through the house. It is. I might as well get a herd of wild horses in here. It couldn't get any more busy if I did. So my new moment of inertia is larger than my old moment of inertia. Why? Because the mass is distributed further from the axis of rotation. That's why. So now we're ready to move on from here. We've learned about we've learned about the variables used in rotary motion, and we've learned about torque and the rotary mass I, and I think now we're ready to get into looking at energies and conservation of angular momentum. The same ideas we used in linear physics, we use in rotary physics, but in rotational physics. But we have to get the variables down and the concepts down from our linear physics before we can do rotary physics. Thanks for disturbing the camera and making it move. Ponies running through the house, I tell you.